Hello there, my name is Japheth Mast, and welcome to the Make Life Awesome podcast. I'm the Ex-Amish photographer with the funny name and the crazy hair, but trust me, there's a whole lot more to me than just that. In this podcast, I really hope to show you my heart more than what's in my head, because that's where all the really beautiful stuff is. I'm so glad you're here. Let's jump in to learning together what it looks like to make life awesome. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm here in downtown Redding, California, in a little office space above Theory Collaborative, which is a fantastic coffee shop. I'm here with a hero of mine, a mentor, a father, someone I really look up to and aspire to be like, and really excited for this conversation today. Yeah, excited to hear from this guy's heart and just what he has on his life. And so I'm sitting here with Mr. Brandon Walden. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, man. Glad to be here. So
to start off, why don't you share a couple minutes of your story, who you are, what your life is like right now, and just a little bit of that journey.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm 41. I'm a husband, I'm a father of 5 beautiful girls. Life in so many ways right now is nothing like I would have ever expected. And in other ways is everything I could have ever dreamed of, So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've spent most of my adult life failing and succeeding at business, probably more failing than succeeding. Bought and sold companies, had companies that did really well and others that just bombed entirely. We've lived, my wife and I have a really blessed life. Our girls are magic and they're really, really special. But our girls are everything. I was just writing the other day thinking about, the why behind what we do. And that's always such an important conversation. It's easy for parents to be like, oh, I do what I do for my kids. It's like, okay, but why? Like, what's the real reason? What's beyond that? And for me, it's more like I live the way I live. I do the things I do because I want my children to experience a present father and a dad who's like interacting with them on a regular basis and who's flexible and can work from home, be home for lunch, take them to school, ballet, all of the things that so often we get stuck in as men. Like, I've got my 9 to 5, I've got my job, I've got my career, don't really have a lot of extra time to do all these other things. I'm so grateful that I have the flexibility to just be around, Past 7-8 years of my life especially has been like a opening up of Pandora's box and looking at all the pain in my heart, assessing it, seeing it, saying it, dealing with it, the muck and the mire of it. Can I call it muckraking in a sense? It's you go into the deep places and saying, why do I do what I do? And not the why of the positive, but why am I the way I am? And a lot of that uncovering has led me to who I am today. And it's funny, quick story of even being here in Theory, above Theory Coffee Shop. Last year when this place opened, I was all excited about it, heard about it, and all the buzz, and it's a cool coffee shop in town. I told you this story personally, but I walked in the place, and for the first time, and the moment I walked in, I just had this overwhelming sense of this whisper in my head of like, you don't belong in here, you're not good enough. And I was like, man, I've spent the past, 5, 6, 7 years working on all that stuff, and thought I'd overcome a lot of it. Didn't really understand what was happening. Didn't really like how I felt. Ordered my coffee, went and sat in the corner of the room, and fast forward through the story. Every time I left, I felt impressed, like I needed to go back the next day, even though I didn't like being there. And so I went back the next day, and same thing, felt the same way. You don't belong in here. You're not good enough. You're not cool enough. You're not whatever. It was just weird. It was a strange thing to hear and feel because I'd uprooted a lot of that stuff in my heart. But over and over for 8 days in a row, day after day after day I came in here. And on the 9th day, I pulled up to the front of the coffee shop, was about to get out of my car and walk in, and I had this thought just sort of like shoot through my head of, if they just knew who you were, they'd be so excited to meet you. And I kind of quickly dismissed it, like, well, that's silly. None of these people care who I am. And if they even knew who I was, they still wouldn't care. But I just had that thought, and it was enough of a, we'll see. And I walked in, ordered my coffee, didn't feel as insecure, as hesitant to show up and to be present. Because the other 8 days I kind of had my head down, I was doing my thing, and I wasn't being friendly and reaching out and saying hello to people. The 9th day was a little bit different. And as I was walking back to my seat, this guy who I had seen in there multiple times, like said, "Hey man, how you doing? What are you working on? I see you in here all the time." And it was like the first person to actually like really engage me. We kind of stood talking for a couple minutes, small talk, nothing like really deep. But I just felt like, oh, I was just seen a little bit differently. That was cool, you know. Went on with my day, worked, left, and I kind of felt like internally like, okay, cool, victory. I don't have to go back there again. I overcame this thing. And I had this sense to go back there again tomorrow. And I was like, come on, this is ridiculous. But I did. I got up the next morning, dropped my kids off at school, pulled up, and I had that thought again. And this time it was more like, well, that worked a little bit better yesterday than all the other days before. So I'm going to kind of remember that. What if all these people knew me? If maybe they'd be excited to meet me. If they knew what I was, what I carried. And then this other thought, right on the heels of it, was they'd be like, oh my God, it's Brandon Walden. And I was like, no, that's just stupid. Because no one's going to be like, oh my gosh, it's Brandon Walden. I walk in. I'm standing at the threshold of the doorway, kind of cased opening to wait in line. And the guy behind the counter catches my eye. I had seen him 9 days in a row. I'd said my name a few times, I suppose. And he's like, oh my God, it's Brandon Walden. And bro, I literally, like I stood there for a second in shock and absolute disbelief. And then I started weeping. And I just cried like a baby. And I was like, I don't even understand what just happened. This is not real. It didn't feel real. And I mean, like not like oh, my eyes watered up. I mean, I was like, like a loud cry, like embarrassing cry, you know? People looking at you kind of cry. And there's people in line looking around like suddenly this guy starts crying. What's going on? Like I just lost my dog or something. And I walked up to the guy, and as I was about to order my coffee, I was trying to find out how to interact with him and what to say about what just took place. Yeah. And he looked at me and he was like, bro, what was that? And I was like, man, you have no idea how much that meant to me just now. And he was like, what? I said, just saying my name. It was just, it's like, that's this whole thing. Like everything in my journey has just been about like being okay with who I am, but also like stepping into who I am with confidence and feeling like, yeah, I'm enough. I'm good enough. I'm all those things that I fought for years against, and finally getting to the point where it's like, oh, this is cool. Someone just saw me for a glimpse, acknowledged me where I'd hidden for so long, and suddenly it was kind of like, oh yeah, here I am at this coffee shop where I belong, you know, and now I have an office above it. It's kind of cool. So,
I love that. That's like a testament to just who you are and all the work that you've put into to work through the stuff in your heart. I was reminded of kind of a little bit of your earlier journey. In your early 20s, you were an aspiring rock star, essentially. And I'm wondering if you could share the story with Peter when he said, something about like, if you only knew how loved you were.
Yeah.
And then something like 14 years later, it finally hit you. Something. Yeah. I don't know if I'm in the details right, but
yeah, you're spot on. So I had spent 16 to really through my early mid-20s playing music, writing songs, playing guitar. I had at one point moved to Nashville to pursue music kind of full time, and I've been playing for years, and it's kind of like my job was just traveling around doing music. And I was pretty decent at it. I enjoyed it and I loved it, and was I would say like I wasn't a starving artist. I was eating, ramen and stuff like that sometimes, but I was fed, but I lived in my car in Nashville for a couple of weeks before I found a place and some things like that. But it was a cool story. It made for a good song and good content. But yeah, early in my 20s, during that same season prior to moving to Nashville, I was in South Africa, and one of my mentors is named Peter Van Niekerk. And he's like one of the best men I've ever known in all ways. He's in his upper 70s now. He's probably still more fit than most guys you and I know. And he runs like several miles a day and does yoga. He's ripped for like 70 something years. It's just ridiculous. And he also has old daughters, and this was before I got married that we had this conversation. And I definitely, I draw a lot of my emulating the kind of man I want to be from this guy. But I was there at 20 years old, sitting in South Africa for a couple weeks, spending some one-on-one time with him one night. And we had been talking about all kinds of like deep theology and questions I had about stuff. And I was trying to, not like school him, I was trying to like ask him questions to see what he's going to say about this. What do you think about that? I'm thinking I knew something. And at one point, I guess just because he sensed there was something lacking in me, he looked at me and he says, Brandon, would you like me to tell you something that when you get it, it'll change your life forever? And I was like, yeah. And I literally grabbed a notebook and my pen, and I was like ready to write down whatever this word of wisdom was going to be. And he's like, there's nothing that you can do that's going to cause God to love you any more than he loves you right now. And I wrote that down. And then I looked up at him and I was kind of like, and? Because that wasn't enough. It didn't land at all. And he's like, well, the converse is true as well. Like, there's nothing you can do that would cause him to love you any less than he loves you right now. And I was like, okay. And he said, like I said, whenever you get it, it'll change your life forever. Fast forward, literally at 34 years old, 14 years later, just like you said, it was a moment in a room with a pastor friend of mine who was coaching me through and counseling me through some stuff. I just started to uncover a lot of the pain in my heart from sexual abuse and stuff I went through as a kid, and trying to work through how that had made me who I was and how I dealt with insecurity and shame. And I was in this room with this pastor and having a pretty deep conversation about my views on the Father and my judgments of the Father. And at one point he did this crazy thing, man. It was like, I don't know, it's hard even to talk about it without getting emotional, because it was such a pivotal moment for me. But he's like, hey, let's role play something, Brandon. Let's just act out what you think it would be like to meet the Father for the first time. And I'm going to play the Father and you're going to be you. And we were sitting in this room that was, we were probably about 10 or so feet away from each other on these two leather chairs, a little coffee table in between us. And he said, so I want you to just assume I'm the Father and stand up and walk towards me the way you would the Father. And I was like, this seems so stupid. Like, you want me to literally, are we just talking about this? Or he's like, no, I want you actually to stand up and walk over to me. And I thought, this is bizarre. Like, I felt embarrassed. And he's like, no one's going to see this. No one's ever going to hear this story. Here I am. And he told, it was strange. He was sitting back in his chair with his feet kind of kicked up, like, just chill. And I'm trying to decide, am I really going to do this? Do I really want whatever might happen if it was like he was setting me up for something, but I didn't know what. Anyways, he looks at me and he kind of motions with his hand, like, come over here, just get up and walk. And I put my hands on the seat and I was about to sit up and I was like, you literally want me to, it's like, yes, just get up and walk over here. And so I got my butt like 6 inches off the seat. And this old guy, who's white-haired and scruffy face, literally had jumped over the coffee table and literally tackled me in my chair, to the point where we literally fell back on our backs. And this grown man's like straddling me on the floor. It's kind of a funny picture, I guess, for people. It wasn't weird. It was just crazy. And I'm laying on my back, and he's saying to me, like, Do you not know that I would run to you? Do you think that I would actually wait for you to walk to me? And just speaking these things over me as a father and as the father that I'd never heard. I'd literally never, ever experienced what I was experienced there, laying on my back, hearing this. And I remember thinking in my head, asked the question kind of in my own head, like, man, like, God, is it possible that it's really that easy? Like, and then Peter's words round the heels of that question, like, is it really that easy? Was, there's nothing you can do to make me love you any more than I love you right now. There's nothing you can do to make me love you any less. And it's suddenly just like, it's like a wheel that just got like locked in. The gears just finally hit. And like, I've never been the same since that moment. It changed everything. And from that point forward, it's then been more of a discovery of the depths of that. But for the first time, it was like the veil was kind of torn, if you will, and my disbelief and my I'm not enough, I'm never going to be enough. How could I ever be enough? How could I ever do enough? Earn, approval, affection, whatever it may be that I was seeking. That moment, the need for that, the thought of that, the desire for that was just like, oh, I don't have to do that. Huh. Well, what does that look like then? And now learning a new way to live. So, yeah, as much as inner healing has been, strategic and counseling and therapy and life coaching and retreats and conferences and books and content I've taken in over the past 7 or 8 years, much of this has just been found in rest and just going, yeah, I don't have to do and this is the word I use with my own children. I say to my girls, there's nothing you can do that's going to move the needle for me one way or the other. I'm redlining in love and affection and approval of you. Like it's never going to go down. It's never going to shift. You can't make me, feel less excited about being your dad. There's nothing you can just make me even more excited. I am full on, full tilt, this is it. And I think that's what the Father feels of us. It's like, I see you trying to win my approval, but you don't have to. And it's like, oh man, how deep does that rabbit hole go? And I'm digging with my hands and feet constantly trying to see, is it really true? Is it really, really true? Yeah, so far it hasn't changed,
Wow. I don't even know what to say. Wow. I remember the first time you told me that story. I think it might have been one of the first times we met. We had coffee a while back.
Yeah.
It just so touched me. No words.
I have a hard time having words as well. I mean, it's genuinely in all of the things that I've encountered in my journey of growth and healing. Those moments, they're like these hinge point moments that are pivots that you shift direction and you never go back. And I've got heaps of those along the way. What I used to think is that they were a change of direction. It's just more like going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's funny, I was listening to a guy, a TEDx talk a couple of years back, talking about children and babies in their high chairs and how, for those listening that have children, they'll understand this picture, but we've all been a child. We can almost remember this kind of testing that we would do with our parents. You see a kid and they're holding their spoon and then they drop their spoon off the high chair and they kind of look at the parent to see what the parent's going to do. And the mom or the dad's like, oh, don't do that, little Johnny. Here we hold it. We don't throw spoons on the floor. And you hand it back to them. And they kind of do their thing. And then all of a sudden they kind of push it over to the side. And then they can drop it again intentionally. And they look at you. And we think man, they're being so disobedient. Why aren't they listening to me? So, hey, don't do that. And we start getting more stern and more hey, no, don't do that. We don't do that. We don't drop our spoons. And then they finally settle in. Okay, I probably shouldn't do that. It looks like Daddy's going to get kind of pissed if I do that again. So they grab their fork and they go off to the other side of the tray and they drop it on the floor. And in our brains as parents, we're thinking, they're doing the exact same thing I just said not to do, but they're not. They're actually, more often than not, seeing at what point will my parents' affection and approval and acceptance of me change? What's the limit of their love? What's the limit of their ability to have patience with me and compassion with me. And I feel like it's like that with a father. There's not this like rebellious tendency in me that's like, oh, I'm just going to do all kinds of stuff to see if he'll still love me. But there are these explorations of like, man, what if I don't read my Bible every day? Does he still love me? What if I miss church 2 Sundays in a row? What if what if I don't do all of the things that I've been told I'm supposed to do in order to find his approval? And finding him in those moments is the most freeing thing ever. That's truly when that becomes like, oh, I am really just like a little kid who's wanting to see if the Father's really going to be consistently for me. And that if I drop the fork and the spoon and my cup and I make a mess, he's still cool. He's still good. He still loves me. That's the dream right there, is just seeing that in the depths of that. Yeah, I'm constantly pushing stuff off the tray table myself for that reason.
I think we all are. You talked about Peter, and I know you have a whole list of people in your life that kind of have that role similar to he does. And I just remember being so blown away when you were telling me about that. And I'm wondering if you have maybe any practical ideas for anybody listening that's seeking those people, what to look for, how to approach them, what to do. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny. I think when I was much younger, one of my first mentors in that space, aside from like my own dad, which was like a natural mentoring that happens, obviously like as a parent and a father and son. Outside of him, the first one that I can remember that was like an intentional relationship was a pastor named Milton Mosby. And I was 17 years old, and I'd meet him for breakfast on like Thursday morning. I remember just thinking like, there's something about this guy. He knows some things. He's got enough gray hair to clearly he's walked through some stuff. He was this African-American guy with this really big bushy beard and white hair and a white beard. He looked like an African-American Moses. I mean, it was just like really in all ways. It was like, wow. And just for those of you that are listening, Japheth is pointing to my white beard. But that's always a good indicator, at least of someone that might have lived a little bit longer than you. But I remember I spent like every Thursday with him for quite an extended period of time. And then we would stay in touch after that, even when we didn't meet regularly. I spent a lot of time with my grandfathers. I loved nothing more than sitting and listening to the stories of my grandfathers. My grandmothers as well, but really my grandfathers. I feel like I kind of incarnate in a lot of ways the things about them that I kind of gleaned from them in those years. One of my grandfathers was a composer and a musician. The other grandfather was an artist, and he painted like watercolor painting. And I gave up like art scholarships in high school to pursue music and to do mission stuff. So like I kind of had both of them in me in a way that I was exploring the creative side, but they were both war veterans. And one of them was like a navigator on B-52 bombers and a beautiful painter. Like it was just crazy. But over the years, I sort of found like, well, I learned a lot from my dad, but there's these other things that I wanted to explore that I didn't really see that my dad embodied. And my dad was an architect and a GC and was like a great entrepreneur and had done a lot of like really cool things. He was also really great in like his marriage with my mom. There was those things I could pull from him that I could learn. But like in my mind, like as a creative, I was looking for like, man, is there anybody out there like me that I could glean from? And so I would see these men that I go like, man, that guy's like an artist, or he's a sculptor, and he has a business, but he also does this, or his business is that. I want to hang out with him and see if I can learn how he kind of hacked that a bit. And then there would be like over time, as I got married and started having kids, I was looking for like other fathers that were raising their children really well, that had teenagers when I had a 2-year-old, and said, hey, how'd you guys handle this? And what I realized over the years, I was pursuing these guys. It was rare that any of them pursued me. It was rare that some of these guys would come up and be like, hey, I think I want to mentor you. Like that just didn't happen. It wasn't normal. What happened was I saw something in them that I felt like, hey, I don't want to necessarily be just like them, but in this area of their life, yes, they're killing it as a father. I want to learn from them how to father. Oh, that guy's a super successful entrepreneur. I want to learn business and those kinds of strategies from them. This guy's a painter, an artist, a creative, a musician. And now what I have is this like 12 or 14 guys that I attribute kind of who I am is kind of like this amalgamation of all of them. It's like alchemy in some way. You go like, okay, a little bit of this guy, a little bit of that, a little bit of Peter, a little bit of my dad, a little bit of this guy. Some of these guys are peers that are my age or even a couple of years younger. Most of them are older than I am. And it's just a pursuit. It's a genuine, like, intentional pursuit of, I want something that I see in this person, and I'm going to reach out and ask for it. You model it well. You've done that with me and with others. And it's just being humble enough to say that maybe this person has something that I can learn from, and just being persistent enough to seek it out.
Good. Very good. I'm going to switch directions a little bit. I'm going to talk about your book that you're writing right now.
Yeah.
And a little bit about that book. So can you just kind of give a brief overview, and then I'll maybe pick some points for you to hopefully dive into a little bit deeper.
All the years I did business pursuits, marketing was always kind of like a cool thing to think through. Like, what ad can we run that's going to get the most attention? How can we present this service in a way that's going to have people take a second look and stuff? And so when I was trying to decide what I was writing and what to call it even, I went through all these like iterations of potential titles. And then one day I stumbled upon this word that I've always heard as an insult, and I've always heard as like a derogatory thing. And I thought, oh, that's perfect. Everybody around me that's close to me in that space was like, no, that's actually really terrible. You would never want to call a book man-child. And I was like, yeah, but the definition in Webster actually says a man that has the qualities of a child, a childlike man. And I was like, I think in my own life, I've seen so many things where when I was more like my kids, I was more connected to them. It's like the parents that never get on the floor and roll around with their kids and build the block towers and the silly stuff. It's like, that's when your kids feel most connected. It's like when you're actually emulating that. And as I was sort of just, kind of hacking through, like, well, what would this look like to write a book for men that's actually trying to teach or encourage them to become more childlike? And so the tagline for the book is like the working kind of tagline is, what if becoming more childlike makes you a better man? And it's just a question I'm posing to the world. And it's a book for humanity. It's not like a religious book per se by any means. In so many ways, it's not. It's just like, let's just look at and assess where we are as men and as a culture in Western society. And I don't think that what we see is sustainable. I think we're seeing the breakdown of it in our culture, toxic masculinity, or even like the emasculating kind of quality of media with men. There's these extremes that we're either going like full primal, chest pounding, screaming until we lose our voice, much like I probably sound right now with my cold, or we're going like we should go ultra feminine and never stand up and never speak out. And neither of those is good. Like, and I don't think that, being childlike is 100% the answer. I think it's more, how do we bring being childlike, these childlike characteristics, into masculinity and hold them in tension with standing up and defending your family and holding down a job and providing security and stability and all those things, but yet be willing to dream and be willing to try, be willing to explore and all that stuff. So it's been a trip writing it. We're nearing the finish line on editing right now, and it's the first book I wrote was a children's book where I would say it was like my life cleverly disguised as a children's book. And I say now, like, when I think about this is just my life. It's literally like I'm pouring my heart out. There's no beautiful illustrations or clever metaphors to hide behind. It's just real and raw and honest. And I'm excited and I'm scared to death simultaneously, because it's not I'm not writing something that I think everybody's going to agree with. I know they won't. And that's the challenge of saying, well, if I'm going to be willing to operate as a man-child in all the best ways, I've got to be willing to try and be willing to say something even if everybody doesn't like it. Because kids would just stand up and say what they felt. They wouldn't hesitate. They wouldn't worry about the repercussions. They would just say, no, I really think that that's green, not blue, or whatever it is. And so trying to do that is pretty fun.
When do you expect Man-Child to be released?
Looks like October. Yeah, sometime early October, I think. I don't have an actual date just yet. There's a couple things pending, but I think it's going to be early October.
What are a couple childlike qualities that you most connect with, or that you most are drawn to? Yeah,
we highlighted 9 in the book that we kind of found and discovered that seemed to be through and through. One of the funnest ones to explore for me is children are naturally dependent on adults and as parents to like provide and to take care and to help them with things. And we're told as men to learn to become independent. And so the tension is, I tell this story about my daughter, Ruby, when she was like 5 years old. She got potty trained and she was totally fine. She wasn't like wetting her bed or anything. But she would always alert us when she was going to go to the bathroom. If she had to like do number 2, like, hey, Daddy, I'm going to the bathroom. I'd be like, okay. And then for the first few times, I'm kind of like, why is she telling me every time she goes to the bathroom? But she'd tell me, and then she'd kind of walk away and go to the bathroom. And then a couple minutes later, she would say, I'm all done. And it was like her alert, like, it didn't hit me at first, but it was essentially, I need help now. Because she needed help wiping to make sure she was clean. And it was so funny because I'd turn the corner, walk into the bathroom, and she'd just be sitting there in the toilet with a big grin on her face, like with no shame whatsoever. Like, yeah, I'm here and I just pooped and I need help wiping. And it's like, I'm okay with that. And it was like I was learning something about her willingness to be dependent without any shame attached to it. Whereas a man, the moment I feel like, man, I've got a need, and what am I going to do if I have to expose my need to some other dude and say, hey, I actually need you, I need your help, and whether it's financially or in just life, or I need support, we're just sort of, society says that's an error, that's wrong, that's weak. And I actually feel like it's one of the greatest ways to connect with somebody. Another one of my friends locally told me a couple months ago, he's like, hey, I've got this thing, it's like this 30-day challenge I'm doing. And I was like, cool, man, what is it? And I'm thinking it's like an exercise challenge or whatever. And he's like, for the next 30 days, I'm making sure that every day I ask someone for help, even if it's like a menial task. Like, could you help me carry that box? And I'm like, why are you doing that? That's funny. Like, that's, and he didn't know what I was writing. And so it's kind of like, this is interesting. Like, that sounds fascinating to me. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? And he's like, well, I just feel like it would be good to humble myself and to realize that I need people in my life. I always go and do things by myself. And I feel like if I just invite people into helping me, even with small things, it can be fun and we might connect more. And it's true. It's what it leads to, is connection. So that's just one. I mean, there's heaps of these different attributes that we can look at, but it's probably one of the ones was initially the hardest for me to reconcile in my own life. To go, man, I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, I'm going to perform, I don't want to be seen as, lacking and whatever else it is, and so to go, wow, I need help. Oh man, do I want to let people see that? And one of my best friends, it was funny, he helped invest in the first book I did, a children's book. And it was funny, even at that time when I was trying to find a way to do it on my own, he called me and said, hey man, I'm in, dude. I want to help you fund the project. And I was like, no man, I'm good, dude. I'm going to figure this out. He's like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, you talk about all this interdependency and being willing to humble yourself, and yet you're telling me no. I'm like off. And I was like, oh crap, I'm going to have to, even if I don't want to, as a willingness to explore this, I've got to actually accept him as a partner, accept his help, even though I think I could ultimately do this on my own. And it's been one of the greatest things for our friendship, because we had to have tough conversations. the risk and the return and when and how am I going to pay you back and what am I going to pay you back? And it could have been a conflict, but it's actually drawn us closer together, So that's one.
Oh, good stuff. I love it. Love it. What do you want to talk about? You're talking about being a 3 on the Enneagram, which I am as well. And just that thing of asking for help. Definitely big weakness, big point of being terrified. I went through a spot earlier this winter when I was at a low spot, financially, and I needed to reach out and ask for help. And I was forced to confront that. I'm still confronting that every week, Do you have any practical homework or just action steps to do in order to get better at just this whole thing of being childlike, and whether it's in asking for help, being more humble, reaching out to people, reaching out to mentors, and then pursuing people? I don't know. Anything you have to share on that?
Yeah, the last chapter of the book, before kind of a conclusion little page or so, which is more of I don't really know what I'm writing, guys. Maybe you can try this and see what it works. The conclusion is not a definitive, told you this would work. It's more of let's start a conversation. The chapter right before that is a chapter about heart posture. And it's, and it could also be said it's about core values. And I think we've shared this before and talked about it. I think for me, there's 3, and there's a lot more I could say about this, but in short, there's 3 core principles and values that I operate from in my own life that I hold as sacred and that actually trump religious beliefs and things as well in some way. And it's saying that in a faith-based audience, people are whoa, no, man, your faith is essential. I'm yeah, it is. However, these things are hardwired deep in your core. These are things you get to choose and play with in a sense. For me, the primary things that I try to emulate and do, there's 3 of them. One's humility, one's authenticity, and one's a growth mentality, growth mindset. I feel if I operate from those 3 places, what I find is the people that I surround myself with, that I connect with on a deep level, embody 1 or 2 or all 3 of those as well. When I don't see those things, it's really difficult for me to connect. This is why I say faith is irrelevant in whatever your religious persuasion is or your beliefs, because if I run into some dude that's just a humble guy that's the real thing, he's authentic, I don't care what context I'm in, man, this is my people. I feel connected to this guy. I feel I can be real with him. If I find someone that's humble, that's authentic, and is trying to grow, the cool thing is it doesn't matter to me what area he's trying to grow in. If someone says, I'm trying to grow in my marriage, well, cool, let's talk about that. I'm trying to grow in my business, cool, let's talk about that. Those are the kind of the core principles for me to find and search for people. I think, it's a big claim to say those are the best 3, principles, but I don't know, man. I have a hard time thinking that some other equation is better than that. If the world all operated like that, if we as men, if the guys listening to this were to say, okay, I'm going to try on humility more in my life. I'm going to do what my buddy did and say, I'm going to be willing to take a challenge and actually do something to put myself in a humble space. If everybody did that, could you imagine the impact, if we all were more real and authentic? Could you imagine if we all wanted to grow in what area of our life that we were looking at the moment, or all, my gosh, could you imagine the impact? So for me, that's the homework, is how do we bridge the gap and do this childlike thing and become better men and whatever else, just better human beings, period. We start with an acceptance of an honest assessment of who we are and humility. We say we know we need to have help. We present ourselves true and real and authentically in front of everybody that we come in contact with. And then we say we want to grow. And I think if we all did that, take the childlike attributes and all the other stuff aside, oh man, that would be a dream. It takes work and it takes unpacking and digging deep and doing some honest assessments of who you are and why you are the way you are, and all the stuff I've been going through for the past 7-8 years, even leading up to writing this. But I feel like if you sat down, like you and I connected, because one of the first conversations we had, in my mind, I'm assessing while someone's talking, is this guy going to be real? Does he present himself with humility? Does it seem like he wants to grow? Any one of those three is a chance for me to connect. But when someone embodies all of those, it's like, oh, dude, it's like the trifecta. It feels like that, And so that's what I'm always looking for.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Well, I'm going to wrap up, but where can people find you online? Or if you want to leave your street address. That's cool.
No, thanks. My wife would not like that. It's funny. I'm actually putting my phone number in the book. I was thinking, Bob Goff did that, and it was kind of a grandiose thing in a sense. But I actually was really challenged to think, man, if I actually say I really want to help, I need to make myself available, And so that's a challenge. That's going to be an interesting thing to print. But like, oh, here, call me on this number. But we're doing it. So the easiest way right now to find me is on Instagram, and it's just my name, Brandon Walden. I've got a website for the children's book I wrote, but we're about to launch our website for speaking stuff that I'm doing and this other book, and that's just not launched yet, so it'd be hard to find me there because it's all hidden at the moment. But soon enough, if they get on Instagram and find me, they'll see all that other stuff eventually.
Go follow him. Send him a message letting him know how much you like him. He needs affirmation. But yeah. If you like this, take a screenshot of your phone and share it to Facebook or Instagram, letting the people know how awesome we are. Sorry, I need to be more humble. We just talked about this. But thanks for being on the show, Brandon. Pleasure. All right. Peace out. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. I would love if you would leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcasting platform, as it really does help the show out. You can find me on Instagram at Japheth Mast, that's spelled JaphethMast, or my website, japhethmast.com. Have an amazing week, and don't forget, make life awesome.